Hello everyone, welcome to the Hindu analysis for 17th May 2021. Let us begin with the first article today. The second COVID-19 wave shows signs of peaking. So if you are well aware what is going on in India right now, you can clearly see that or understand that we are in the midst of a second wave. For the past few weeks alone, we have been seeing cases anywhere between 3.5 lakhs to 4 lakhs in positive rates, and we are seeing deaths of around 4,000 or above 4,000 on a daily basis. Right now, for the last 2 days, there has been a consistent decrease in number of positive cases that are being reported daily, and it can be attributed to two things. One, we can understand we have surpassed the peak of COVID-19 cases, or the second wave of COVID-19 has plateaued as of now, and the recovery rates have increased in far numbers than what is being reported as positive COVID-19 cases. Right now, the sudden bump that we are seeing in cases, which led to a daily caseload of a world record number of more than 4.5 lakhs, has been consistently showing reduction in those numbers. For the past 7 days, we are seeing an average of around 3.92 lakh cases, but as of May 15th, we are seeing around 3.4 lakh of cases, which is significantly lower than 4 lakhs of positive cases on a daily basis. This shows that the positive rate has fell from 22.6% to 19% in the same period that was being observed. Now, what do you make of these figures? These figures does suggest that the second wave of COVID-19 is on a reduction phase. As I said earlier, we had seen the peak has plateaued, and now we are seeing a reduction in number of COVID-19 cases. We have to be very wary here with recognizing the fact that when we were experiencing a peak of COVID-19 cases on par or above 4 lakh cases on a daily basis all over India, certain states have reduced their testing percentage, which directly correlates to reduction in number of positive cases, but the percentage is negligible in terms that we are not considering it on the whole COVID-19 second wave picture here. Now, what is the interesting fact that we have to take away from this article? Particularly, we have to identify that the positive rate across different states is not uniform. Certain northern states are showcasing high positivity rates, whereas certain southern states are showcasing less positivity rates. For example, let us take the states of Maharashtra and Goa. In the second wave, at the peak of second wave of COVID-19, Maharashtra witnessed highest number of positive rates of COVID-19. On the other side, Goa registered less number of COVID-19 positive cases. But on the flip side, currently Maharashtra is reporting less number of positive COVID cases. But on the contrary to earlier estimate, Goa is experiencing the peak of second wave in current scenario. This shows that the number of cases that are being reported from different states are not even, and it differs from one state to the other state. But on an average, we have seen the peak of COVID-19 cases in India. We have seen it being plateaued, meaning we saw a consistent number on par being reported around 3.9 to 4.2 lakhs on a daily basis. Now, the testing has also been reduced, but that doesn't, as I said earlier, that doesn't correlate to the reduction in cases. So, as far as the testing levels is concerned, in 11 major states that are being accounted for, only 4 states out of 11, only in 4 states the positivity rate is on the rise, meaning though they have increased their testing level, the positivity rate also has increased significantly. Now, what is the main discrepancies that are being observed here? For example, in the states of Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Karnataka and Rajasthan, the positivity rates has been on increase, even though the number of tests have decreased. Particularly in the states of Andhra Pradesh and Assam, Karnataka, Rajasthan, they have the government or whatever the authority that is in power right now had reduced the number of testings. Despite the reduction in number of testings on a daily basis, the positivity rate has increased, meaning the virus is still in its peak stages in these particular states. But you have to understand, testing is one of the weapons in tackling coronavirus pandemic in any scenario. This was the main objective of this is the first weapon in the arsenal to deal with COVID-19. So it has to be seen why these states, particularly in the case of Andhra Pradesh, Assam, where the positivity rates are higher, not compared to Karnataka. Karnataka is kind of in the top of positivity rates in India right now. But despite having high caseload, for whatever reason, these particular states have chosen not to increase their testing capacity or number of tests on a daily basis. So it seems that they have adopted a strategy of keeping the number of tests low, so that it showcases a peak or a plateau in number of cases that are being reported. While coming to the states of Maharashtra, Telangana, Uttarakhand, Jammu and Kashmir, Gujarat, Goa and Delhi, though the testing rates as well as positivity rates are on decline, so they have also adopted the strategy to reduce their testing on a daily basis. Despite that, their positivity rate has gone down, meaning their COVID-19 second wave graph is on the decline there. So two things are to observe from this. One, in 11 major states where the coronavirus second wave is in full effect, few states, almost all states reduce the number of their testings. Despite that, few states such as Andhra Pradesh, Assam have been seeing consistent increase in number of positivity rate. On the other hand, Maharashtra, Telangana, Uttarakhand and other states are seeing a decline in their positivity rates. Coming to the next article, COVID-19 response over next 6 to 18 months critical. So this is from the chief scientist of World Health Organization, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan. She is the chief scientist at World Health Organization, who has been at the forefront of addressing coronavirus pandemic response all around the world from World Health Organization standpoint of view. In this case, she is discussing about the key developments that have been taking place in India, and she is kind of suggesting what India should be doing in the next 6 to 18 months to ensure that we don't see a repeat of second wave in third or fourth waves of coronavirus pandemic. If you take the example of Japan, Japan has been very lucky in terms of in sense that in the first wave, second wave and third wave of coronavirus pandemic, they didn't have much effect, because as you know, Japanese people are very disciplined. They have been following protocols that have been set in place by the government of Japan. So they were very lucky in missing first wave, second wave and third wave of coronavirus pandemic. But recently Japan has been hit with the fourth wave of coronavirus pandemic, and we are seeing parallels in second wave of COVID-19 in India and fourth wave of COVID-19 in Japan. They are also facing shortages of oxygen. They are also facing shortages of therapeutics like remdesivir and whatnot, and their medical infrastructure, despite it being the one of the best in the world, is also crumbling under the pressure of fourth wave of coronavirus pandemic. So as she is at the forefront of COVID-19 response all around the world on behest of World Health Organization, she is clearly suggesting that even though if you come out of second wave of pandemic barely scratching, India should be very careful in preparing and how it will respond in third wave or fourth wave of coronavirus pandemic that India will definitely see in the coming next 6 to 18 months. Now, one of the attributing factors for this suggestion seems to be that the evolution of virus itself. As you know, we are seeing multiple variants of the coronavirus pandemic. The variant or the strain of virus that we have first noticed or identified in Wuhan at the end of 2019 is no longer the same variant that we are observing in various countries. India is currently struggling with a variant that is far more virulent and transmissible than any other variant that we have seen. UK is also having a variant that is far more transmissible than any other variant that we have seen. Currently, we have 4 strains of COVID-19 virus that are more transmissible, that are more virulent, and the damage that are inflicting on the patients or the victims of this virus is far more deadlier than the earlier variants that attacked US and UK and India in the first wave of coronavirus pandemic. She is reiterating that we know that there will be definitely an end to acute phase of pandemic when we have vaccinated about 30% of the world population, which at this point of time looks very unlikely. If you know, one of the challenges that the world, not only India, is facing in terms of vaccination is lack of vaccination. If you have been tracking the issue of trips at World Trade Organization and UN at the same time, rich countries like United States, Germany and other rich Western countries are not allowing certain waivers in IP rights in terms of vaccine manufacture, particularly in regards to mRNA technology. You have to remember that South Africa, India proposed a TRIPS waiver in World Trade Organization. First, Western countries like UK, Germany, European countries and US first initially pushed back on the waiver concept floated by India and South Africa and other such third world countries. But later on, noticing the pushback from public from all around the world, United States government came out and said that we are going to support the TRIPS waiver. But here is the difference. United States government is not supporting the TRIPS waiver that was proposed by South Africa and India. Instead of supporting the proposal that we submitted to WTO, United States government came out with their own proposal, and they are saying that we are going to negotiate in the next 18 months and the new waiver for TRIPS, which the German government or the German Chancellor Angela Merkel clearly indicated that she is not going to support it. And even if US is pushing for certain waivers in TRIPS agreements, we are going to veto it. That is the first challenge that the world is facing in terms of answering or countering coronavirus pandemic with vaccination. India is also struggling with vaccine production. We have currently 2 vaccines that are being produced in India. The third vaccine, Sputnik 5, we'll discuss in the next article or coming articles about the Sputnik 5 whole deal, what is going on with Sputnik 5. The idea or the dream to vaccinate at least 30% of the world population by the end of 2020 seems to be far than reality right now. The only way out of the coronavirus pandemic at this point of time seems to be vaccination. So there is a lot of agreements that are in the way of getting that number in terms of world population being vaccinated for coronavirus pandemic. Coming to the next article, restructuring the tribunal system. So the restructuring tribunal system is interesting because the tribunal reforms, rationalization and conditions of service ordinance 2021 was promulgated on April 4th of 2021. This article particularly seems to be in critical of what the government is doing here. But before taking a stand here, let us understand what the ordinance or the bill that is being introduced in Lok Sabha particularly talks about or does away with. So the ordinance that was promulgated on April 4th of 2021 dissolves certain existing appellate bodies and transfers these functions to other existing judicial bodies. So there are certain tribunals that are in place that were brought by certain acts, particularly in the case of Cinematography, Trademarks Act, Copyright Act, Customs Act, etc. So these have appellate bodies that are called appellate tribunals or appellate boards. Now what this reforms ordinance talks about is taking away or dissolving those appellate tribunals or appellate boards and merging those functions with that of the High Court or some other divisional bench of an High Court. So there has been a lot of pushback because the way that the central government has approached to bring these changes about, because you remember on April 4th they brought the ordinance by bypassing the entire legislative or this judiciary system. The government is also being accused of not engaging with the civil society or the judiciary or whatever you call it Now, a bill with similar provisions that the ordinance brought in was introduced in Lok Sabha on February 13th, 2021. The bill was first introduced, the coronavirus pandemic and later subsequent chaos that was ensured after the second wave or the first wave of coronavirus pandemic ensured that the bill was not up for discussion. So instead of waiting for it to be discussed in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, in the legislative body, the government brought in an ordinance, and it is at present it is dissolving certain appellate bodies. So what are the changes that are being proposed under the ordinance? As I said, the Cinematography Act of 1952 ensured that there will be an appellate tribunal for this. Now this appellate tribunal has been dissolved and it is being merged with High Court. Likely, the Trademarks Act 1999 also brought an appellate body which is being consolidated with High Court. Again, the Copyright Act and it's brought in the appellate board, which again is being consolidated or merged with the commercial court or the commercial division of an High Court. Likewise, the Customs Act authority for advance rulings is being merged with High Court. The Patent Act brought in the appellate board for patents, which is being merged with High Court. The two interesting things are the Airport Authorities of Airport Authority of India Act 1994, which brought in the Airport Appellate Tribunal, which the central government for disputes arising from the disposal of properties left on airport premises by unauthorized occupants. Now this is again being consolidated with High Court for appeals against orders of an eviction officer. So there has been a lot of criticism because, for example, in the case of the Finance Act of 2019, it empowered the central government to notify rules on first, qualification of members of tribunals, and two, terms and conditions of their services, along with composition of search selection committees for 19 tribunals such as customs, excise and service tax appellate tribunals. Now the ordinance amends the 2017 Act to include provisions related to the composition of search selection committees and term of office of tribunal members in the Act itself. This Act or the ordinance that was brought on April 4th has far-reaching effects on the tribunal structure of the Indian legislature or judiciary structure. Judiciary structure, because it also meddles with the NTC. NTC is a concept that was first brought in 1999, but it hasn't seen the light of day because of a lot of pushback from either governments or civil society as such, because civil society and the judiciary has been asking for it, but the governments subsequent or successive governments has been reluctant to bring in the National Tribunal Commission. Now with this act or the ordinance, there is no scope for the NTC to exist, because they are doing away with most of the tribunals that come under the purview of NTC. Now this ordinance specifies that term of office of the chairperson of a tribunal will be 4 years or till the attainment of age of 70 years, whichever is earlier. And for other members of the tribunals, the term will be of 4 years or till the age of 67 years, whichever is earlier. They are not only fiddling with the structure of the tribunals, they are also changing or fiddling with the whole governance and the selection, the tenure and everything of the tribunals. Now, this ordinance also includes the concept of National Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission to be established under the Consumer Protection Act of 2019 under the purview of Finance Act 2017. Now, the ordinance removes the following bodies from the purview of Finance Act of 2017. Number 1, the Airport Appellate Tribunal established under the Airport Authorities of Act of India 1994. The Appellate Board established under the Trademarks Act of 1999. The Authority for Advanced Ruling established under the Income Tax Act of 1961. And the Film Certification Appellate Authority established under the Cinematography Act of 1952. Now, As I said earlier, the NTC was supposed to be set up to take care of all these tribunals to ensure that they were functioning properly, they were functioning independently as such, because NTC would be taking care of their appointments, NTC would be taking care of any issues arising out of these tribunals so that they function smoothly. Now with this ordinance, though the concept of NTC was National Tribunal Commission was established or brought up or cropped up in the year 1999 itself, this bill ensure, or this ordinance ensure, that NTC doesn't see the light of day. That is the issue in this particular restructuring the tribunal system pertains to. Coming to the next article, the road from Ladakh is paved with disruptions. So one of the less discussed issues due to the coronavirus pandemic is the situation in Ladakh right now. Now, on the surface, it seems that both India and China are moving ahead with the status quo that has been established by China here in the Chinese occupied Ladakh territory here. Now, it has been more than a year since tensions between India and Chinese troops at the line of actual control first broke. Now there was, you have to understand, there has been this set rhythm in the line of actual control where similar skirmishes or events did took place, but not to the extent of India losing 20 soldiers and China losing anywhere between 40 to 50 soldiers in a violent clash. Now, recently, new commercially available satellite imagery has clearly shown that in the areas of Depsang Plains, Galwan, Gogra, Hot Spring, north bank of Pangong Tso, Kailash Range and Demchok, China is still occupying Indian territory. Though they have said that they are going to disengage and pull back their troops that have been stationed there. From the newly available commercial satellite imagery, it is clear that they have consolidated their positions with far more number of reinforcements and permanent structures. If you remember correctly, the situation at Galwan was resolved in few weeks after that they declashed. Both had multiple rounds of commander level talks on both sides. Both agreed that they are going to disengage and they are going to pull back their troops. Both sides are agreed that they are going to pull back their own machinery and everything from the eyeball to eyeball situation. If you remember correctly, the Indian Army occupied a few strategic heights at Kailash Range at the end of August, where we were in confrontation with the Chinese on an eyeball to eyeball situation. If you have seen certain pictures of that eyeball to eyeball situation, Indian Army tanks were almost 10 to 15 feet away from Chinese tanks, pointing their barrels on the opposite to each other. So after multiple rounds of talks, both sides agreed that they are going to disengage from this location on the north bank of Pangong Lake area. This was announced by India's defense minister in the parliament, and he also said that within the next 48 hours after this engagement, both the armies are going to convene to discuss and resolve other remaining issues. That was the last meeting where the commanders discussed the emergency situation was in April. In this meeting, you cannot say we were surprised by the Chinese actions in this meeting. Remember, Chinese have always been doing this. It was to be pretty brutal about how India has been handling this situation. It is our fault. On the commander level meeting that was held on April 9th this year, the Chinese have refused even to discuss the remaining issues. What are the remaining issues? The Chinese occupation of Depsang Plain, the Chinese occupation of Galwan area, Gogra, Hot Springs, north bank of Pangong Lake area, and even Kailash Range and Demchok. All these areas except certain finger points of Pangong Lake area, Chinese have brought in more reinforcements. Chinese conducted troop rotation, meaning they have taken out the old soldiers and they have brought in new batch of soldiers. They have been consolidating their positions with permanent structures, both in terms of defenses and soldier what do you call buildings to house the soldiers also. If you have seen the latest satellites, we can clearly see that they have been building infrastructure non-stop since Galwan clashes. Now that outcome was not entirely unexpected. Every analyst that was based in India and abroad were clearly saying that India has given the only strategic advance that they had in the occupation of Kailash ranges. India was hoping that at least the part of Indian government was hoping that the Chinese were going to stick to their word, and when the de-escalation and de-engagement took place in the heights of Kailash ranges in the next commander level talks, India was hoping that, or at least the government was hoping that they are going to discuss the de-escalation and de-engagement from Depsang Plains and Gogra hot spring areas. The Chinese since then has maintained a consistent stance that they are not going to de-engage or pull out from these areas, and they have clearly expressed their wish, stating that be happy with what you have to the government of India directly. Now, what is the problem here? Now, India had lost its only leverage on the Kailash range, on the north bank of Pangong Lake area. This was very strategic blunder in terms of our side. You have to agree, we have done some blunder here. There is no point in discussing at this point of time to say that India is in a dominating position at this juncture right now. Now, we did not take back the control of more dominating peaks in the Blacktop and other areas there. Both from the government standpoint of view, there is little bit of information that is being coming out of what is the current situation. Whatever the information that we have right now regarding the Chinese occupation of Indian territory, it is coming from external sources and commercially available satellites. The Indian government has been silent. Indian government hasn't been making any announcements or updates in terms of what is the ground situation that is happening in Ladakh. Right now, as of now, the PLA troops are denying Indian access to territories that we used to control by patrolling. Before the Chinese occupation or the PLA occupation, our troops were able to go to that point. We were controlling that area because we were patrolling that area. Now the Chinese troops have occupied this. They are denying our troops to access that territory. They are denying our patrol parties to move ahead by blockading them, and the government is still at this point of time saying that we are going to restore the status quo ante of April 2020, which at this point of time is still unfulfilled, and by the looks of Chinese action, it is going to take far more time than what the government of India is hoping for. Though the north bank of Pangong Lake area has seen some sort of de-escalation, but we have to restore patrolling rights there also. If you remember, the agreement for de-escalation in that area was that both sides are going to for now give up the patrolling rights in that area. That has also been not discussed. We haven't seen neither de-escalation nor de-induction in the Kailash range as of now. But the rhetoric has been reaching fever pitch on both sides, because both India and China said that they need to ensure peace and tranquility in border areas. The fact that surprises most of the analysts is, what is the point of ensuring peace and tranquility when Indian territory is being actively occupied by Chinese soldiers? And the government is also very silent on this. That is why there is a lot of criticism both internally and externally. But the government is also subconsciously kind of indicating that there has been no further deaths after June, there has been no firing incidents, there has been peace, and all this. But you have to remember, the Chinese still control Indian territory. But on the part of Indian Army, we have been consistently maintaining the massive deployments that we have been putting in place since end of August last year, and this has been reciprocated by the Chinese side also. As I said, they have brought in more reinforcements. They conducted troop rotation. They have been building permanent infrastructure in Indian occupied territory, and they have been very active in Bhutan also. If you have been following what is happening with Bhutan also. So from the point of Western Command of the Chinese PLA army, they have been very active, and they are very much occupying Indian territory as of now. One of the key challenges in front of India in addressing the border situation is the home coronavirus pandemic situation. As far as India is concerned, we have a very devastating effect of COVID-19 second wave in India. We were trying to address these issues, but at the end of the day, it's on the government to ensure that border is secure at any given time, despite what the domestic situation is. Now, one of the things that India was trying to during the coronavirus pandemic as a part of outreach was Vaccine Maitri. The idea of Vaccine Maitri quickly dissipated when the full force of second wave in India was experienced. We were supplying vaccines to multiple countries around the world. The moment we were hit with the second wave, in order to fulfill the home needs, the Indian government slightly abandoned the vaccine diplomacy, that is Vaccine Maitri. This left a very big opening for the Chinese to pick up the Beijing vaccine diplomacy concept, because the moment India stepped back from the Vaccine Maitri program, China has been very active, particularly in the South Asian region, to supply vaccines to its neighbors. Countries such as Bangladesh and Sri Lanka have already started procuring vaccines from China. Currently, the Sri Lankan government is in negotiations with China to manufacture Sinopharm in Sri Lanka itself, but there are some modalities and other issues that are plaguing that agreement. China has been actively casting doubts on India as a reliability partner, and they are raising certain questions about its ability to act to counter China. Beijing has clearly sensed an opportunity in the second wave of COVID-19 in India. They have been very quick to organize, meet, and supply vaccines to all South Asian countries except India. Though they have been offering help and everything in terms to India on a consistent basis, on a daily basis. Almost their spokespersons are coming out and saying that we can help India, we'll do this, we'll do that. But India has been consistently not even, in certain cases India didn't even respond for the offers from China. One, we have a very much active situation in Ladakh area, where the Chinese have clearly occupied Indian territory. As far as the government response, it has been silent mostly. The second, we were priding ourselves with the Vaccine Maitri program. The moment second wave hit, the concept of Vaccine Maitri went out of the window. Beijing was very quick to step in to fill in that gap with their own vaccines, and to a great, you have to give credit to them, it has been a little bit of a success, because seeing what India is grappling with right now, most of the South Asian countries are very much happier to engage with China to get their vaccines. Now comes the idea of the Quad. Quad as an idea is, even though we had multiple engagements on different levels of governments from both all the partners of Quad, even though we had an head of state engagement in terms of President Biden, Suga, Australian Prime Minister, and Indian Prime Minister are having a virtual meet, we have to iron out various details in terms of what will be the role of India in Quad itself. The Quad on its part agreed or pledged to deliver 1 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccine through to all the nations in Indo-Pacific by the end of 2022. Now this was an effort to counter the Chinese influence in the region. But I discussed earlier about the TRIPS agreement. I discussed about the vaccine Maitri, the fall through of vaccine Maitri program. So this pledge seems to be undeliverable at this point of time. The UN's Gavi's Covaxin scheme, where rich nations will support vaccination drives in poorer nations, is also on ice because there is acute shortage of vaccines around the world, and the situation seems to be deteriorating on a day-by-day basis. Right now, many analysts and policy observers were saying that this is a good chance to re-engage with China in terms of trade policy and everything. But you have to remember, there is an active border situation between both the countries right now. India has been very categorically denying that at the center of the bilateral relationship between India and China, but the border issue is at the top of the list. First, solve the border issue, then we will talk about trade and every other thing. Unless the border issue is resolved, India has been clearly stating that we are not going to negotiate a trade deal. Now we are going to negotiate any other agreements. So the ideas that we have to engage with China despite having a border crisis seems a little bit immature, because you have to show resilience at this point of time. Coming to the next article, this is in line with the vaccine problem, that production of vaccine problem that India is facing right now, using all options. Now the concept of enabling other manufacturers to produce Covaxin is a necessary step that has to be agreed on all levels, because we have to increase our vaccine capacity to at least vaccinate 60 to 50% of the population in the next coming months, just to protect India from a deadly or far deadlier third wave or a fourth wave of coronavirus pandemic. Now we are being ravaged by the COVID-19 second wave, and one of the major things that we are facing right now is the supply constraints in delivering vaccines that are available to India, that is Covishield and Covaxin. The Russian developed Sputnik 5 has just been deployed, but it isn't being produced in India as of now. As a result of these supply constraints, we have drastically seen the pace of vaccination in India. Though the Indian government announced that they are going to vaccinate people aged between 18 to 44 age group from May 1st, no state in India has been able to vaccinate this particular age group. Right now, in many states, the situation is this: they are prioritizing people above age of 45, and they are prioritizing only first dose of vaccine. They are not even prioritizing people who have received first dose and waiting for the second dose. In every state, almost all, the strategy seems to be that first let us vaccinate people above 45 with first dose, then we'll think about the second dose. I have already discussed this. India has been asking for a temporary waiver of provisions in the TRIPS agreement to facilitate universal access of COVID-19 vaccine, but that hasn't been successful because there are a lot of modalities that are going on international levels regarding IP and profits from vaccine sales and etc. etc. Now the central government has this option to nationalize the vaccinations at any point of time, but the central government seems to be reluctant to do so, that because the center has done nothing to bring vaccines and medicines under the statutory regime of India to allow wider availability and diversity of options. Now, as far as the central government, they have submitted to the Supreme Court that exercise of statutory powers under the Patent Act of 1970 can only prove to be counterproductive at this stage. This is in clear contradiction to its international position for temporary waiver of TRIPS agreement. On the world level, they are saying that it is critical for the various companies to temporarily give a waiver to vaccine COVID-19 vaccine technology in order to ensure mass vaccination of the world population. The Indian government is saying the exact opposite in the Supreme Court, stating that bringing the vaccines under the Patents waiving vaccine licenses under Patents Act of 1970 will have little effect, and it is counterproductive at this stage. One, as far as the vaccine production in India is concerned, Serum Institute has clearly increased their vaccine production, and as far as Bharat Biotech, they have come into agreement with 4 other vaccine manufacturers in India to increase their capacity from 1 crore of vaccines on a monthly to almost 7.5 crores of vaccine production monthly. And that is the problem here. The article talks about the duality that is being adopted by the central government, where on the world level they are saying that you have to give waiver or temporary waiver of provisions to TRIPS agreement, all while in India they are saying that invoking the statutory powers under the Patents Acts of 1970 will have or will be negative in effect. So that is what this article particularly talks about. Coming to the next article, entire globe is a unit, Center told Supreme Court on vaccine exports. Again, we are discussing about the vaccine Maitri issue here, because as I said earlier, vaccine Maitri has been a little bit of an failure from the policy standpoint of view, because there are a lot of petitions against the government of India in Supreme Court raising certain questions on why the Indian government chose to export vaccines when they clearly knew there was a deficit of vaccine manufacturing or vaccine stock in India itself. As a reply to the Supreme Court petition, the central government said that the entire globe is an unit during a pandemic, and the Minister of External Affairs shows that between January and April of 2021, India exported 663.698 lakh made in India COVID-19 vaccine supplies to over 19 countries and UN health workers and peacekeepers. As far as the central government's reply to the affidavit in the Supreme Court, the Health Ministry said that once a epidemic takes the form of a pandemic, its management has to be done keeping the entire globe as an unit. Now the government is clearly backing their stand that we have to export vaccines to other countries so that they'll help us in the time of our need. When the Supreme Court asked why the government had to export such huge number of vaccines to other countries, the central government backed up their position by saying that breaking the chain of transmission and minimize chances of import of COVID-19 cases to India, and India is not immune to pandemic till the world at large has contained the disease. And it also reiterated that the export was limited and done giving highest priority to domestic needs. When you look at the numbers, it actually had a negative impact on our own vaccination policy, because once the vaccination drive started, or the first phase of vaccination drive started, it was immediately clear that we are facing an acute shortage of vaccines, both in Covishield and Covaxin, and the government at hand didn't do anything. It is not critical of what the government did or what the government didn't do, but the facts have to be taken at face value here. I can clearly understand that there has been some miscalculation from both the hands of policymakers or the government in assessing the need for vaccination or the number of vaccines that stock that is to be made available to public to achieve our set goals. So it is a little bit of a interesting tone that the central government has approached here, stating that they had taken the decision of vaccine Maitri being the priority of the government at that period of time, and right now they are trying to defend their stand here. But to the credit of Indian government, you have to give it to them. The vaccine Maitri program was a great success until it was functioning successfully or efficiently. because out of the 19 countries that India gifted vaccines to, majority of these countries were poorer Caribbean countries who cannot afford their own vaccination programs. But the criticism came only when the government of India failed to maintain a healthy balance between domestic vaccination and export of vaccine, particularly the Indian made vaccines, both Covishield and Covaxins. And the response from the central government is also absolutely true. If you go by the World Health Organization statements, particularly in the case of Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, the only way that you can counter pandemic is through vaccination, and to see deadly impact of coronavirus in the future, at least 30% of the old population has to be vaccinated. It is right. If you vaccinate India alone, that doesn't solve the problem. And just wait few more months to see what I'm talking about. Right now, both UK and United States have successfully vaccinated majority of their population, but the rest of the world is not vaccinated yet. Now, as of yesterday or few days ago, the American government has clearly lifted the mask mandate, meaning people need not wear their masks. Meaning the world is going to open up soon, and these people Americans are going to travel from America to these places as tourists or on work basis. And when they travel back, though they are vaccinated, there is a greater chance that they might become carriers of the variant that is being ravaging that host country. When they take back that variant to United States, there is a greater chance that we are going to see a repeat of what has happened in the first wave of coronavirus pandemic. So the government statement here is not a lie. You have to understand that the only way to come out of coronavirus pandemic, either in India or around the world, is to vaccinate majority of the population. But the criticism only came when we failed to ensure enough stock for our domestic needs. That is what the central government is talking about here. Coming to the next article, statewide positivity rate is uneven. We discussed in the first article itself how though the testing numbers are going down, the positivity rates in 11 major states are showing different numbers or tally. Particularly in the case of Andhra Pradesh and Assam and others, Karnataka, though the number of tests have gone down, their positivity rates have increased. Similarly, in the case of Maharashtra, Goa, etc., despite their testing being low, their positivity rate has also fell. It's as I discussed earlier, there is a discrepancy in positivity rates in states. But one thing out of this article that we have to take away is, despite having low test or low positivity rates all over India or in some states in India, the consistency is in the death number. India has been consistently reporting about 3,900 deaths of COVID-19 in the every day for the past 1 week. To a larger extent, everybody seems to agree that this death count is underreported. In some cases, they are saying that it can be 2 times more than what the government of India is reporting. But the conservative estimates, meaning more cool-headed people who know actually what they are talking about, are estimating anywhere between 6,000 to 7,000 deaths a day for COVID-19 related in India. Though we are seeing low positivity rates, the deaths related to COVID-19 in India is still high and above 4,000 mark on a daily basis. That is what we have to keep in mind when discussing positivity rates or low numbers of testing in almost all states in India. Coming to the next article, this is again in relation to the coronavirus situation. When you look at the numbers, one can clearly see a pattern emerging in the second wave of COVID-19. one can agree that one of the epicenter or hotspots for second wave of coronavirus pandemic seems to be urban areas. But that seems to be the first stage in the second wave of coronavirus pandemic. Now the government is also agreeing that we are in the second stage of second wave of coronavirus pandemic, where we are seeing a direct impact on rural areas due to second wave of coronavirus pandemic. Now the government has clearly agreed that they have been seeing a consistent increase in caseloads at primary healthcare centers, and they are seeing a number of positive cases in children also. So that is the issue here. At the first stage in the second wave, the epicenters were urban areas, metropolitan cities, and major population centers. Now the ministry has released an SOP document on COVID-19 and containment and management in peri-urban, rural and tribal areas, which are seeing a large number or a spike in number of positive cases. You have to remember, in rural areas the testing is almost all non-existent in certain states. Despite having low testing numbers or low testing abilities, the number of positive cases are increasing. It clearly shows that right now we are seeing an increase or a spread of coronavirus in rural areas in the second wave. If the oxygen situation in Delhi and other metropolitan areas where infrastructure is already in place for transportation and distribution of oxygen, if in that conditions only the situation was that bad, imagine what COVID-19 second wave will do to rural areas. On its part, the Indian government has been trying to intensify and reinforce facilities in primary healthcare centers. They have been conducting active surveillance to be done in influenza like illnesses or severe acute of respiratory infections by health workers, and they have released, the health ministry has released new standard operating procedures to identify and track certain respiratory infections and influenza like diseases, and they are also issuing new guidelines as per the integrated disease surveillance program IDSP for contact tracing of coronavirus in community settings, rural settings as such. On its part, the government has also ensured that staff are trained to perform rapid antigen tests, and test kits are being provided and made available at public health facilities or PHCs, primary health centers, to fight the second wave of coronavirus pandemic in rural areas. But it is clear that after the first pass of second wave in urban areas, we are going to see an increasing number of cases in rural areas now. Thank you. Stay safe. Namaste.